Hello and welcome to the Time Well Spent podcast. My name is Devin Pennypacker, and this is a show where each week a guest and I will use our shared love of watches as a jumping off point to talk about the passions that keep us ticking, whether that is collecting, creativity, time spent outdoors, or the way we choose to explore the world. This week, I am joined by a guest, Brock Stevens, a man whose CV is as broad as his biceps. He is a U.S. Navy diver, marketing manager, incredibly talented photographer, gearhead, watch designer, and all-around good guy. I stretched this out a little bit to let him catch his breath, as I'm sure he just finished running a 10K before jumping onto this podcast. But when you do, Brock, how are you doing?
Doing great, Devin. Excited to be here.
Yeah.
It's always fun to hang out, so.
Good. Well, I'm glad I didn't catch you off guard too much with that intro. You are on the second ever episode that we're recording here for the podcast, so I really do appreciate you jumping on and sharing in this special moment with me. But we do have to kick this off with the traditional watch podcast thing of a wrist check. Brock, what do you have on your wrist?
I have what my friends have aptly named the Brock Bianchi, my collaboration with Jock Bianchi, the Jock Bianchi JB300 Profonde, a watch
Very
that I'm
cool.
extremely proud of, and I think it's been cool to see it land on people's wrists recently. So.
As you should be. Yeah, that watch is incredibly cool. It's one, I have raved about this watch quite a bit since it came out, since I first saw it at, I guess actually since you showed it to me quite a while before it actually came out to the public. And then I got hands-on with it at Wind Up Watch Fair and then bugged you about it until I actually got hands-on time with it. But that watch, you crushed it with that design. They crushed it with the execution. And now that people are having it land on their doorstep, it's all over Instagram. That has to be a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't expecting, there were a couple of risks that we took with the design overall. And I wasn't expecting the reception to be so good. I thought people were going to be like, oh, just another tool watch, with it. People seem to really like the stonewash finish, and I see a lot of new adopters of the Destro configuration, which is cool for me to see, as that's kind of like my thing with watches that I really have wanted to kind of share with other people.
And you're, obviously you're right-handed too. So like the Destro crown originally was made for people who are left-handed, but you're wearing this watch on your left wrist, which is, I guess, counter against the original design, but it's really just to keep it out of the way of running into the back of your hand, right?
Yeah, so, in my line of work when I was at the ship's husbandry dive locker, I'm working on ships and stuff, and we're underneath submarines. And so a lot of the times, like a watch will, if you're diving for 5 hours at a time while you're working, and it just gets uncomfortable. And it's like those little annoyances that I've talked about before that kind of cause long-term pain. And so it's like, it just adds up to something that you don't want to deal with in the water. And so Destro has always been the way to go for me. And
yeah.
It works for other tactical stuff or playing sports or anything really. It's much better and a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I tend to wear my watches pretty low on my wrist, so the Destro crown is just a pretty excellent option for me. That's part of the reason why I like the LHD Pelago is probably the best out of the entire line. Maybe with the exception of the Ultra now, because that thing is just a tank on the wrist. But it's funny you bring that watch up. What strap do you have it on? I mean to ask you that too.
I switch between all sorts of watches of espionage straps, but this is just the standard OD Green Glomar Explorer.
Okay, interesting. Well, because I have the same watch sitting here on my desk, but I happen to have it on your strap, actually, your collaboration strap here, because this one, it's the HP diver strap from Divecore. Because to me, this strap just feels natural on this watch. It looks incredible. The yellow accents the watch pretty well. And this is the strap that I threw it on as soon as this watch came in. And I don't think I've taken it off apart from a few photos here and there. It's just perfect. It's perfect on this.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the aspects of the watch that I wanted to color match the yellow to that strap as well.
Yeah.
My products that I do for Deep Sea EDC kind of collaborate together in a cool way. But, that is my favorite rubber strap, hands down, on the market right now. There's a reason that I wanted to work with them. And Paul from Divecore is an amazing human being. So it's awesome to see people love that and do that combination strap. And it's just so rewarding to see, for sure.
But yeah, it's easy. And yeah, shout out Paul. He is amazing. Brock, you're the only person who can make me like yellow. Yellow is one of my least favorite colors out there, but for some reason it works. It works here. Anyway, on my wrist, I've got my black on black Seiko Turtle. I think this is the SRPE 93. Also on a Watches of Espionage 5i black nylon. The reason I'm wearing this is because this is a watch that if anyone has followed along when I've talked about this watch in particular, it has been broken for a very long time. I broke it almost 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. I shook the movement until the thing snapped on me and
Oh
have been
boy.
wearing it basically as jewelry set at 10:10 Tuesday the 20th because I like how much the turtle wears on the wrist. It's just perfect. The geometry has that Seiko magic. It feels too good to not wear it. And so every once in a while I throw it on just to feel that little bit of magic again. But yesterday, in filming a video project for my YouTube channel, I actually cracked it open and fixed the movement myself. So I got to play hobby watchmaker and finally have my Seiko turtle running again. So
That's
there it
amazing.
is.
Did you watch some YouTube University videos on like what could possibly be wrong, or how did
I
that
should
go?
have.
Yeah.
Definitely should have. So it was cool. So it's a video that actually, if you're listening to this podcast, it's out on my YouTube channel now. You can check it out. But I teamed up with DIY Watch Club. They sent me their pro watchmaker toolkit and I
Oh, sweet.
essentially just kind of dove in. I've done the building a watch kit from them before, so I have some experience in building a watch. And if you haven't done it before, I highly recommend you do. It's a lot of fun to kind of go through their steps of building a watch. This is not a paid ad, by the way. I'm telling you right now, like this is organic. I genuinely had a good time doing it. Uh, but it teaches you the inner workings of a watch in a really cool way. It teaches you how to kind of play with the movement. Um, and I had broken another Seiko before where I wore the watch until the rotor fell off. So I had pulled apart an older Seiko movement and kind of knew what had gone wrong in that one. And so I
Hmm.
knew in my brain that this was probably a broken mainspring. I had watched a whole bunch of wristwatch revival from, Marshall, who's a pretty awesome YouTuber, and had a good feeling that it was a mainspring. So I ordered a new barrel and mainspring, used the parts or used that kit to pull the whole thing apart, found the barrel, pulled it out, swapped the barrel out, and then eventually, actually, spoiler if you haven't watched that video, but I went back there and I pulled the hands off, I swapped the dial over, and I put it on an NH36A because I wanted the black on black with the kanji date instead of the white kind of offset date disc on there.
Hmm.
But it was cool to tear the whole thing apart. I actually have it sitting. I have like all the parts sitting here, and
I
I
love
have a
that.
bag with like the broken mainspring sitting out there. I don't know. It was just a ton of fun to tear the whole thing down and be a watchmaker for a day. But I did spend most of my day on my knees trying to find screws and a barrel arbor that I lost for about an hour and a half. And I have hardwood floors too. There's no carpet, but I still could not find the thing.
Yeah, that's just even working with spring bars. I'm losing them all over my office. There's probably, I mean, I don't even know how many there are around here, but
Yeah, it's awful, and you worry too. I mean, you have dogs, I have cats, like, you worry about, them kind of getting into it or eating them or whatever the case may be. Honestly, stepping on them, they're not as bad as Legos, but they're still not fun to step on, and yeah, that was a fun project. It took up most of my day. I started filming that when there was a ton of daylight out, and then I stopped filming it when there was absolutely no daylight, and it was I don't know, for me, it was a worthwhile day. I think
yeah,
for watch
yeah.
nerds like us, that's a perfect day. To spend it inside of a watch is pretty cool, and not something that we all get to do.
No, for sure. I mean, we'll get into this in a little bit, but like while working with Bill, I've seen what he can do with when he puts watches together, and so it's like it's definitely intrigued me. And as a eventually learn how to do that, and maybe that kit is perfect for me. To be honest, I've seen them before, and I think it'd be awesome. So
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, just being blunt about it, I think the amount of advertising that they do kind of turns some people off because they think that maybe it feels a little scammy. They see it all over the place and it feels kind of like there's too much advertising. But as someone who's done them, I highly recommend them. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Or just buy a really cheap movement off of eBay and break the thing yourself because why not? We're in this hobby. You're going to break watches. At least I'm going to break watches. Brock, I know you've broken watches. There's no way you haven't with what you do. Why not just dig into them? It's a lot of
yeah,
fun.
no, you're right. It also would probably be a good way for my wife to interact with me in my watch space, and maybe we'll do one together or something.
Well, that would
But
be cool. Well, yeah, because she does. I mean, she's into like crocheting and puzzling and gardening. She likes to work with her hands. Like, why not? I mean, it's a much smaller scale, but get her into it. That's an awesome
yeah,
way to kind of break her into this thing.
no, for sure. I mean, I've tried to get her to work on my Land Rover with me, and she actually
Yeah,
starts to get very into it. Like
cool.
and so I think the watch, that could be a cool hobby for us.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of breaking out the holiday puzzle, you break out the holiday watch movement.
Yeah. I don't know how well that'd go over at the holiday family dinner, but
Yeah,
maybe with
right. You're trying to pull out the main spring. Everyone, shut up! Everyone, try and find my screw.
yeah. Yeah. with
A little
magnifying
awkward.
glasses. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, watch check aside, I want to jump into a very quick chat here about a hot topic that I want to bring up because we talked about you being a very talented photographer. Obviously, you've done some freelance photography, you've done some in house photography, and working as a marketing manager for both MK2 and for consulting on other brands too. I'm sure this has come up for you in a couple different areas, but I've noticed it more and more in the watch world being a bit more prevalent, and that is advertising and its impact as far as using liquor and cigarettes in advertising. Now, this is a weird thing to bring up, obviously, on a watch podcast. This is a weird thing to bring up in just a watch conversation in general. But I don't know, looking around at the landscape, have you seen this pop up as much as I have?
I've seen quite a few people that I follow on Instagram, and maybe not necessarily companies, some companies for sure, but I've seen quite a few people taking photos with bourbon. I mean, that seems to be a pretty common
Hmm.
one, right? Using bourbon bottles. I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of the shot and a few things like that. But it's definitely an interesting one because, like, back in the early 2000s, it was all over the place. Like, Formula One's a good example of that in advertising. Like, all the cars had Marlboro or some sort of cigarette thousands. And so, it's definitely an interesting subject because I don't, you know, I think with like most of the stuff that I do, I tend to leave it out just because somebody might be offended.
Sure.
And like even myself, like I've been drinking less, and trying to live a healthier lifestyle. And so, they kind of go hand in hand, even though it's a watch photo with liquor in it. It's still kind of like, that's not what I'm about necessarily all the time. And I don't want to portray that. And I don't think companies do either.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, you mentioned obviously a lot of enthusiasts take photos with cocktails and bourbon, and there's like the whole whiskey and watches night that a lot of people will have, or
Mhm.
obviously you have a lot of red bar meetups are in bars or restaurants focused around alcohol, but specifically I've seen it more where companies are returning to using advertising with liquor and now cigarettes. And I guess for me, the reason I wanted to talk about this was specifically cigarettes because we have seen, obviously, you talked about the F1. We saw a lot of cars wrapped in cigarette liveries that really went away because cigarette advertising was essentially made almost impossible nowadays. That is something that is really hard to do for good reason. Personally speaking, I don't smoke. Like you mentioned, I try to drink a whole lot less, and it's something that I'm glad to see restricted, even though those were probably some of the best looking cars that we ever saw in F1. It's a bummer to see a lot of those go away and all the swag that went along with it. But I understand why they did so. But I have noticed that there are some independent brands who are doing a lot of vintage style advertising to go with their vintage themed watches. And they're taking more risks in order to, I don't know, maybe get a little bit of that shock factor in their advertising, or maybe make people see their watches in a different way, or just take notice of their advertising differently. Specifically, okay, so one that I want to pull out as an example, and I hate calling someone out as an example for negative reasons, but Derike and Co. came out with their Capri, a watch that I have been raving about because I absolutely love this watch. But they were the ones who really kind of sparked this idea in my mind because when the first images that I saw pop up on their website showed up, in the top left corner, there is a box of Camel cigarettes. And I saw that there, and my mind just exploded because I started thinking about it and I'm like, wow, that is something that I haven't seen in an ad for a while. And then I started hunting through a bunch of smaller independent brands' photos, and I noticed that there were other brands who were using them here and there. We see decks of cards in the corner, but I noticed that a couple brands were using cigarette boxes, not necessarily a box of cards. And we see lighters all the time, obviously, so it kind of hints at smoking. But this was, for lack of a better word, shocking to me.
Mhm.
And not that I'm saying that there's anything wrong that they did here. It just, again, really caught me off guard because it's something that for the last 20 years we have seen all but evaporate from the marketing landscape. And yeah, really just stunned me, stopped me in my tracks when I was scrolling through the website.
Yeah, and the more that I think about it, I mean, I do feel like people are starting to lean towards a trend of showing that people are not perfect human beings, and people
Yeah.
do more of like not everything has to be, you're going to have your perfect leather pouch here with your, perfect pen, and you're just like, everyone's this perfect human being who everything's organized. Like, life is chaos for sure. And so maybe they're trying to market like your weekends and evenings out and the things that you're going to do to relax or whatever. Cause I mean, everyone has their vices. So I think
Mhm.
that could be part of it. I also think there's a trend and like Mark II and Tornik Ravel, we do this, which I think is a tad bit different because we're focused on beer cans and other things from like World War II and stuff like that, and liquor bottles that were, because back then, I mean, it was a completely different situation, right? Like even on a submarine for our most recent watch, the Baku watch that we did with Project Recover, like those guys were given alcohol, and maybe part of it's just tying into some of these vintage themed pieces, kind of trying to harken back to a different era and stuff like that. I do with the modern stuff. Yeah, I think it's a little bit like it's definitely an interesting kind of angle that objectively I would kind of think maybe like it has to do with the fact people aren't perfect. People do have the things that they do that isn't necessarily healthy for you, and you know I think that's just kind of is what I can kind of see.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm approaching it from a bit of an American mindset too, where obviously smoking has been stigmatized here in a very different way than it has been in Europe. And obviously, Direct and Co is a European company, and other watch brands that I've seen do this are also other European companies, and they treat it very differently than we do. And obviously, their cigarettes are built very differently than ours are.
Yeah,
So it's a very different culture surrounding this. But I've also noticed, obviously, too, we've seen cigarettes kind of pop back up in movies a bit more because we are seeing that the harkening back to a different era where we're just kind of leaning more into that older vibe, the cooler vibe, the things were better, things were nicer, things were built to a different standard,
yeah,
romanticizing how things used to be. And I think that, I mean, you can't deny that cigarettes were a huge part of that because they paid a lot of money to do so. It does make me wonder though, at what point do we start to see futuristic watches have vapes in the corner of their photos? Are you going to shoot photos like that, Brock?
no, I mean I have zero intention of doing that.
Sure.
Like I do, it's weird though because I have seen like back when jewels were popular, like in
Hmm.
even in EDC photos, there was a lot of photos where jewels were part of somebody's EDC, right? And like
Yeah,
it's a simple little cool looking stick is a delivery system for nicotine, but like it's those types of things. Like I could see that possibly like working its way into the space in the future. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, like I do think a lot of it has to do with that harkening back to a better kind of Mad Men era sort of vibe. That's like just no computers, everything was built better, people were simpler, there was no phones, all that stuff, and maybe that's what everyone's trying to market at. And then
for
like
sure.
you said, yeah, in Europe, I mean, it's not it's smoke over there still, and it's very common, and so yeah, I think it's maybe just hitting a different market as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, a lot of it too. I think there is a little bit of that avant-garde era to it too. I mean, we're seeing that avant-garde styling in watches come back, and that whole era of it too was, vintage avant-garde lighters were a part of that, and then obviously you had cigarettes and your long stems and all of that. So it's all of the same era, and it does seem, I don't know, like you're washing out a big significant portion of that history if you don't talk about it. So
Mhm.
maybe that is a bit odd too. And it's like, what is next? Does James Bond not drink martinis anymore if we
Yeah.
just decide to start cutting stuff like that out? And we saw the whole controversy with Amazon start removing, guns and stuff like that from posters. So at what point does it become a little bit weird where we ignore the elephant in the room and say like these things never existed and the vintage things aren't vintage anymore? So I get it. Yeah, I guess for me it was just an odd thing, and I wanted to get your take on it specifically. One thing too, I wanted to ask you about, you helped produce that Baku zine for MK2, which was, I mean, number one, incredible. That thing was
Thank
just
you.
incredibly well produced and a monster of a book,
Yeah.
just huge. I can't even imagine the amount of work that went into it. And you spoke about using a lot of vintage props, including, vintage beer cans and stuff like that. Like the chambray shirt, you had the pocket where you could slide a carton of cigarettes into it. You shoot a lot of vintage style photography, and obviously Hunter, who helps shoot a lot of the photography for that, does a lot of vintage style photography for it too. Vintage props are hard to hunt down. Vintage source material is hard to hunt down as well. I assume that a lot of that stuff is littered with a lot of advertising standard practices that we can't really follow now. Where do you kind of draw the line as far as how you modernize your approach to vintage advertising today? Very loaded question, I know.
I think, there there are point like with the Bakuzine specifically, right? We were working with Project Recover on this, and this and that aren't necessarily looked at in a bright light today, right? And so we had to be very careful treading that line. We try to just make sure that we included things that people can relate to. Like, for example, some of the press shots from the Bakuzine that was thrown at the Hotel del Coronado by the UDT guys. He didn't get paid for basically the entire war because he was out deployed the entire time. Came back with the equivalent of like a lot of money today. It was like $40,000 back in the day in back pay from the Navy. And he basically
Whoa.
said, gave it to keep putting alcohol and food in there and just let the party go for all these guys that just got back from war. And so the UDTs just had a like massive party. And I think it went for, I, I think it was like almost 3 days. It was a pretty long time before they were like, yeah, you're out of money. And so trying to say that partying is a good thing, but we're trying to, show that, people are human and these guys went through some of the most traumatizing experiences they could have ever been through. Right. And they are human and they want to blow off steam. And so I think that's like as far as we probably want to push it, right? Like the war stories of the really horrible things that they happened or people did to each other and stuff like that. We're just trying to highlight the the kind of like general experience and then kind of the from that and enjoy the things that you weren't able to enjoy while you were in a horrible situation most of the time.
Sure. No, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think like, when it like I said, like I think the line is there where it's like, we're not like that's not what we're trying to portray, right? Like obviously that did happen and that's horrible, but we want to show the things that these men went through, the character they had to have to be able to do what they had to do, and then how they were able to um, be rewarded on the back end for what they did, what they dealt with. So,
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you bring up a very good point too. I mean, obviously, we're all human. We all have our vices. We all go through things. We all have stress relief in one way or another. And I'm not going to judge anyone for that. And I think it's very important to humanize products in that
mhm.
way and to show them in a very real light. And I think you do a very good job too of not glorifying a lot of the negative aspects of it, but celebrating the human connection to
Mhm.
all of it, because these are very real things that people go through. And like you spoke about too with, some of the other marketing photos, these are human connected products. These are things that speak to people, and people are real. People do, you know smoke, people do drink, people do experience these things. And to pretend like they don't, I mean, we're just lying to ourselves and we're lying to other people. We're just, I don't know, putting our heads in the sand a little bit on that. And so it is interesting to see where people fall when it comes to actually producing this content.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it would be different, obviously, if it was companies going out and saying like, you know, he's drinking 2 handles of vodka a day with his watch on, and then smoking 16 packs of cigarettes, and like then there's a
Right.
photo of him surrounded by his bottles and cartons of cigarettes or something like, you know. But it's it can go downhill fast, I think, in that aspect. But yeah, I
Totally.
think, but I don't necessarily want it to be like a single company is always talking about alcohol and cigarettes. I don't think that's the right direction.
Sure.
I think even the Zen stuff, like if Ferrari just came out, Zen is a sponsor of their new F1 car,
Yeah.
which is interesting. People have been leaning towards like the Heineken 00 sponsors, Red Bull and stuff like that. So like the non-alcoholic beers, which like I can definitely get behind.
Hmm.
But I think it's an interesting world that we're living in that way with the tobacco or nicotine and alcohol stuff now.
Yeah. I mean, people are always going to find ways to kind of work around the advertising standards that were set up to block a lot of the things.
Yeah.
But that is one that kind of caught me off guard too. But I'm glad you bring that up because it helps us transition here into the main topic that Brock, I really wanted to have you on to talk about here because you are setting into a pretty amazing adventure where you're going to be doing some pretty interesting overlanding here on something called the Defender Trophy. This is something that has a very interesting history, something that actually ties into the hot topic that we just talked about. Can you give us a quick rundown of what the Defender Trophy is, and then maybe we can talk about the history of it and why it connects?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, first off, just to make it clear, I haven't actually been accepted yet.
Okay.
I'm,
Okay.
yeah, I'm still, my application is in. So is Jason Heaton's. Shout out Jason. He's the man.
Yeah.
we don't find out until I think till they said it's kind of confusing. There's two different dates, but possibly the end of February. So we'll see. But it is a lifelong dream for me to compete in one of the trophy competitions, which we can get into here in a sec on what that is. But yeah, so I mean, I applied talking about like what I do, why it kind of makes sense to be part of the competition. Unfortunately, I can't share that with the public per the submission contract yet. But if I
Right.
get in, then it'll probably be shared with the public, which will be cool. So yeah, we'll see. But a little bit of history trophy. It was sponsored by a cigarette company called Camel, and it was basically it started off being primarily an overlanding a sort of adventure where they would go to these remote locations, and for like a couple weeks they would be traveling from point A to point B and kind of having these small little competitions to gain points and kind of helping each other as one big team to advance forward to the next stage and keep going until they finished, and then a winner would eventually be called. And but then it kind of transitioned to a Land Rover event only, with the Defenders, and then later the Discoveries and stuff like that. And then they kind of got rid of it after I think almost 20 years of doing it. And then they bring it back. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, this is my opportunity to do something I've always wanted to do. I mean, my grandpa always would talk about the Camel Trophy event, and so it was kind of like one of those things that I love Land Rover, and I have my own Land Rover Series 2A Santana that I work on, and it just seemed like the right time to kind of see if I could get in and see if I can do it, and the perfect event.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to, yeah, give us a breakdown of everything here. Like, it's something that really just draws me in. It's the most romantic thing that I can think of doing in a truck in general. I mean, if you could do it in the old Land Rover, like that would just be the coolest thing ever. If they would allow you to take vintage cars out there, that would be even better. And if you could do it in the old livery, that would be even cooler. But yeah, obviously there's a whole lot of modern advertising and stuff that goes into it, but it's very interesting. It's got to be a little weird from your perspective too, because there's a lot that you have to do going into this that I don't know. A lot is still kind of up in the air, like you mentioned too. So it's an odd process for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I change in my life, like getting out of active duty Navy, going into the reserves, working in the watch space. But like I've always been somebody that tries to embrace the like uncomfortable side of things and kind of chase that a little bit because it just makes me feel like I'm like learning and trying and I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. I saw it that it came up. And then, I was talking to my wife one day and she's always been a big source of inspiration for me. And so she was like, yeah, I mean, you should totally sign up for it. Like I was sort of joking at first, but then I was like, you know what? Like again. So yeah, I made a video. My buddy Logan Patton helped me film it. He's a local filmmaker in Lynchburg, Virginia here. Great guy. Shout out Logan. And, we just shot it in my front yard and it's a video of me talking about my life. And that was part of the application process. The actual competition itself is, and they're a little bit, there aren't a ton of details out. There's a couple of videos. It's going to be basically taking this Land Rover, the new Land Rover Defender, going and there's a competition 2 days. That's like the first stage of like qualifying, and it's basically I think a bunch of like learning how to get around obstacles. Using the winch for different like methods of moving objects to create a bridge and kind of like mind games too. And then I think there's also some physical elements involved. Like in the video, they tease it like the Land Rover Defender's on a raft and you have to row it down a river, basically stuff like that. That just like is right up my alley with a Defender right there. And like it's just, I mean, it's like a utter dream for me. Regardless, like
Yeah.
I know some people have their qualms about the modern Defender, but I think it's just to be able to do that with a team, especially if I was like paired up with Jason, which is we've been talking about that. Like to be on a team with Jason would be a dream.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Just so much fun.
your own Top Gear adventure, and if you sink it,
Yeah.
you sink it. It's not
Yeah.
yours.
Like I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most. Like I'm sure they'll have
Yeah,
restrictions on like if you crash it, that's
totally.
whatever. But uh,
Yeah,
I think that it's just right up my alley. I love driving. I love cars,
yeah. Well,
racing in general.
it's just so different from anything else that's out there too, and it's I don't know, it's still that little bit of untamed wild that you don't really get from any other motorsport. F1 has been so kind of watered down and restricted, and so has a lot of other motorsport out there. Obviously, rallycross is still very much open, and a lot of the other stuff is too. But to have a overlanding challenge like this is pretty unheard of, and the fact that they essentially shut it down and brought it back is pretty cool because a lot of this stuff got shut down and then never brought back again because of health and safety risks. So for them to revitalize it is pretty special.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of also goes back to what we were talking about before, like going back to the old days. That vibe of the analog, getting out, doing something, which I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent of. Like, cool to see, and I really hope they. I don't know all the details of the competition, but I really hope it is, pretty physically demanding and stressful, and sleeping outside and doing all the things that people don't necessarily always want to do nowadays. Like, that's what
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to. Hopefully, I get in. I will be sure to let you know. But
Yeah. Well, I'm crossing my fingers for you. And I mean, you have to be honest with me. Your audition tape, how much like a Survivor audition tape was this? Did you, shirt off and a headband on? You had some eye black underneath, and you were Terry Crews flexing at the camera the entire time?
flexing definitely happened.
Yeah.
No,
You bit the
but
head off a fish.
yeah, just to show my survival skills. I just lived in my backyard.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, it really was just me. Luckily, they made it really compact. But it goes through my Navy experience, my photography experience, the stuff I do with Project Recover, kind of all that stuff, and
Yeah.
just like my ability. I want to show off not necessarily my abilities that I have, but I have the love that I have for doing stuff like that.
Totally.
And I think that came across on video. I mean, I'm getting better talking on camera. I used to be very awkward, just because I was not used to having a camera shoved in my face and like having to speak to
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Anyway, it was a
uh,
really fun experience.
get used to it, buddy, because stuff like this is going to keep on happening. And well, thank you again for being on because it's. I know that jumping onto a video like this is never an easy thing, and hopefully they document the snot out of this trip because yeah, it just sounds incredible. And hopefully, again, they get you out there and they document the whole thing, and we can follow along and just kind of live vicariously through the lens while you're out there. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think that's part of it is definitely this. Hopefully, I'll be in some cool Defender trophy kit out there with Jason Heaton doing some of these. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
yeah. Well, if that doesn't happen, then I think the two of you just jump into your vintage ones and do your own challenge.
Yeah.
You drive out to Minnesota, and then he drives out to you. You just go back and forth, recovering each other the entire time.
Yeah. Or just sitting in tow trucks. But yeah, I mean,
Pretty much. Yeah.
no, we have actually talked about doing a like meetup at some point. I don't think I can drive mine that far, unfortunately.
Sure.
Just without actually, I think it might make it. I think it's more of a me just going on the highway going 50 the entire time for 15 hours. So
Yeah. I
we'll
mean,
see.
you essentially need an entire second one just for parts potentially,
Yes. Well,
depending
I
on
just ripped the yeah, I just ripped the whole engine apart, so I'm getting the head
perfect.
so it's a quintessential Land Rover experience, which is what I was looking for. Is like
Yeah.
it's been great though. Like get to have my wife work on it with me, even though she would prefer to be crocheting, but it's still fun.
That's that's very cool. A whole family activity out there getting dirty, greasy, and maybe a couple cuts and bruises along the way too.
Hmm.
Yeah,
For
very
sure.
cool. One thing I wanted to ask you about too. So they talk about conservationism as being a big part
Yes.
of this entire Defender trophy. That's not the first thing that comes to mind when I picture trucks driving off-road and tearing up the grass and potentially cutting down trees to make trails. Do you know how that factors into the trophy?
So they haven't been too super forthcoming on details.
Okay.
If you win the competition in North America, then all the other competitions or all the other like countries competitions, there'll be two people selected. So I think there's 189 people total that are going to be competing for the 2 day slot over wins that gets to go to Africa uh, to help with elephant conservation. There's a foundation which I can't recall the name of right now. They're partnering with, and I'm not. They haven't really released too many details on what big defenders around Africa, kind of helping out where you can and stuff like that. And I think that's what they call like the big reward or big prize. Basically, the grand prize is the trip there to do that, drive the defenders, help with elephant conservation, which like to me would be incredible because
Sure.
I'm saving the world, the earth, and trying
Yeah.
to and I love animals. I mean, that's I have quite a few dogs, but I'm a big animal guy. I would have a cat if I could, but I'm very allergic, unfortunately. But yeah, the you know, I've always found them as incredibly like emotionally intelligent creatures and stuff like that, and it would be extremely cool to do that, obviously. So.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because I tried to figure it out myself too, and it was a little bit, I guess, a little vague. And then I ended up on
Mhm.
a part of their website where you can book excursions to Africa, where they take you out in Defenders for a week, and then you pay. It's like $25,000 to go out on like a week long excursion in Africa per person, and I ended up like trying not to book those trips. It was a whole nother rabbit hole that I ended up going down. So eventually kind of lost the plot on that one. A little different trip for me, I guess.
Mhm.
But
No,
yeah.
yeah, I would love it, but we'll see what happens.
Cool. Very cool. Well, and obviously you are a man that's traveling quite a bit here too, because we another thing that I put down on a topic I wanted to talk about, speaking of conservationism and travel and all of that stuff, I wanted to get into a little bit of your involvement with Project Recover. We've spoken about it a couple times already on this episode of the podcast. It comes up naturally in conversation with you quite a bit because it's something that you are incredibly passionate about and for good reason. I guess I'll give you a quick second here. Can you just give a quick elevator pitch for Project Recover, and then maybe we can get into some of the specifics and, of course, the really cool watch that you guys just did for it.
Yeah. So Project Recover is a nonprofit organization that travels around the world, hopefully repatriating the remains of MIAs from all different sorts of conflicts. Not necessarily World War II is the main one, but there's starting to go other conflicts of war. And they travel, they do a bunch of. I guess I should say we, because I'm a member now, and
Awesome.
we are traveling, going over there, doing research on plane crash sites, and trying working with the DPAA, which is the repatriating remains of missing in action soldiers. And so it's a really rewarding, it's a life changing experience, and I highly recommend anybody who wants to get involved. Yeah, I mean it was kind of a dream for me since dive school to become a member. I saw their movie "To What Remains," which is on YouTube. I highly recommend you guys go watch that. And it kind of talks about like how the couple different missions, but everything that they do. Get to be a certified scuba diver to be a member. So that's where I kind of thought I could use my skills and help out.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, very, very important work that they're doing, and very important to obviously the people involved, but to just kind of a greater cause overall, and very, I don't know, kind of, I don't want to call it gut wrenching work, but it is. It's very
Mhm.
emotional. It's very personal to a lot of people. It's telling very important stories, and yeah, just incredible all around. And the more you dive into the stories, the more you learn about the people behind the mission, the more you realize how everyone is just pouring so much of themselves into it. It's just really an incredible organization. Something that I think a lot of people really should check out. Well, I'll put links to this in the show notes too if you want to check it out for the video and the episode here too. But a big thing with this is you guys actually at MK2 just did a Project Recover watch collaboration in order to donate some proceeds to the cause too, which I thought was a pretty neat way of drumming up not only money for the cause, but also just a little bit of recognition for it too.
Yes. Bill and Mark II, and obviously Project Recover. I became a member, and I was. They kind of Bill was one of the early adopters of helping me put on an event for Project Recover called Heroes of the Deep at Lake Phoenix, which was just kind of to spread the word and get other divers, scuba diving park of Virginia. And so the connection kind of happened naturally. I became a member. I started doing the marketing for Mark II, and I was like, I think we could do a watch that really specifically this UDT mission, which we can get into more, is what the project is about, communities, and kind of bring in more people's interest into Project Recover, hopefully more money as well, because it is a very expensive thing to do. And, just kind of spread the word about what they're doing. And uh, the project is Jacob Van Buren had a huge role as well. I don't know if you guys follow him, View on Instagram. Amazing
Everyone
guy.
should. Yep.
Yeah, he did a lot of the writing that I couldn't do or Bill couldn't do. And so anyway, it was it's a really cool way to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I mean, obviously it's really cool to see the whole thing come together. That was the zine that we were talking about earlier too. There was a lot of it, and yeah, just an incredible project to see come together. And this is, I mean, this is a massive undertaking. that kind of goes into all of it, both the Project Recover side of it and obviously MK2's involvement in it. Brock, I'm sure this entire thing had to have been exhausting on your end because you've got your feet in both camps here. From your perspective, how does this thing play out? Obviously, you're kind of the bridge between both camps. Are you involved in this specific mission that's kind of going on? Are you involved in the watch? Are you kind of just playing middleman between all of it?
So I mean, I was definitely involved with pretty much everything.
Okay.
I know Derek Abbey, and then the former president Pat Scannon, who's really the founder of Project Recover. We ended up meeting up in DC to kind of talk and see if they wanted to do a project together, and then it worked out, and so we decided to focus on the UDT mission. I didn't expect it to get as big as it did. It's just there's so much information to process, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of work. A lot of days at the National Archives just looking through documents and trying to find out more information about these three missing UDTs, and it was, it was yeah, it was a there's a lot of information in the zine that actually hasn't been disclosed before, that people just didn't know, which I think is one of the biggest things is the location of the beach that they were actually captured on, and um, it was a lot of work. We were very busy trying to make sure we hit all the timelines, making sure we were very transparent on how much money was being donated from each watch,
Yeah.
because that's very important. A lot of people don't do that. They donate maybe 3% or something small,
If
5%,
even. Yeah.
1%,
For a
and
flat
like,
fee that is
yeah.
really nominal. Yeah.
And like for me, like you can see how much Bill really cared,
Yeah.
um, and what he was willing to do. I mean, it's so it was very inspirational for me to kind of work on this with him and Project Recover and everybody. So
Yeah. I mean, from the outside looking in and knowing kind of the behind the scenes as far as marketing goes and from the watch industry, I assume that Bill lost money on this project. I don't think Bill walked away, with loaded pockets, but I'm sure everyone walked away with a bit of a happier heart, even if it was a little bit heavier after kind of going through everything. I mean, I can hear it in your voice. It's not an easy thing to kind of talk about. It's not a light subject, but important.
yeah, I mean, I consider those guys. They were part of the greatest generation, right? Like, I mean, how many people do you know nowadays that would put their life in the line for their country? Especially, I mean, some of these guys were so young and they had
Yeah.
families they left, and like for the most part, like most of them knew that they were most likely either going to be very severely injured or not coming home at all. And so I mean, to be able to risk your life and do that for your country and for the people that you love is amazing. And so, I think they deserve the most utmost respect that you can give a human being. I mean, and they
Totally.
deserve to be, their families deserve the closure. So
Yeah.
that's why it was so important to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've also been specifically to the site where we think their remains are in Palau. And so, I mean, that plaque right there is something that you can get made in Palau. And that has, from my most recent mission, has three UDT guys in a Palauan artwork style. And then it has the Corsair, which is another subject. But I wrote an article about that on Watches of Espionage, but that's another recovery project we have going on right now that I was a part of. So, but yeah, very, very heart wrenching stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, I just hope that we can do as much as I just want to be able to do as much as I can to help.
Yeah. I mean, the people made of different stuff. Let them smoke their cigarettes. They they earn those.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Are you headed back out anytime soon?
Yes, I can't specifically speak on dates yet,
Okay.
but yes, I am going out there to do the Corsair recovery. So that'll be a lot of diving, and that'll definitely be an emotional one for me. It's my first recovery mission. The other mission was kind of a scouting mission. But yeah, this will be my first full on recovery, starting to haul parts of the plane up from the bottom, stuff like that. And luckily, I have my hard hat certification, so I will be able to do some of the more intense diving work and
Yeah.
really, really put a lot of effort into it. So I'm looking forward to that.
That's incredible. Yeah, this is I think it's a crazy amount of work, obviously. It's really tough. And for you in particular, if people haven't been paying attention to this episode, you were doing all of this background stuff while also trying to qualify for the Defender trophy, while also designing the watch that we talked about at the top of the episode and traveling around to promote the watch. Brock, you are a very busy guy. I don't quite understand how you have time for all of this stuff, but it's all, I mean, it's incredible. It's very impressive stuff.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I I think a lot of that, like, I think a lot of it honestly came from just like being in the Navy, and where I'm kind of used to working 12-hour days, and so like you know if I can do all of that for that long, and then when it comes to like doing these other things, like I try to push myself. Obviously, we've talked about that, but it has
Yeah.
been hard. Like I can't lie. Like I'm exhausted a lot of the time, and so it definitely took a toll on my sanity a little bit. But I
Sure.
don't think I'd have it any other way. Like I just want to create cool things for people, and try to relate these stories, and kind of bring them to the world and live my life. A little bit of sad background, but my dad died when he was very young, and when I was very young. And so I think that's impacted my life. Kind of like I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to try to live my life. So I'm just very passionate about always having something going on.
Yeah. Leaving a legacy. And we're starting to see you pop up in way more places than we ever did. And I honestly couldn't be happier to do so. Couldn't be happening for a better guy out there
Well, thank you.
to see. Yeah, to see your name pop up on obviously all over social media, pop up on a whole bunch of pages, pop up on podcasts, and now on watches. Yeah, it's pretty special, Brock. You got some cool stuff going on. So glad to see
Yeah.
that for sure.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, I never thought that it would get to the point that it's at. Like this was all a passion project. I was just sitting in dive school and came up with a deep sea EDC thing. Just I
Yeah,
remember very specifically. And it was just kind of, it's kind of insane how far it's come, but I'm really doing it for my friends and other people in the community. That's what I care about is most, is just letting everyone. I want everyone to have a good time together,
yeah.
share all their love for watches and life in general. So
Very cool. Well, speaking of
yeah,
which, before we have a small little bit of good time and close out here,
yeah.
do you have any teasers for what's next? We talked about your collaboration watch. Anything that you want to tease for anybody? Can you tease anything?
So I'm definitely doing. Well, there should be another collaboration with Jock Bianchi at some point, so that should be cool. Cannot
Cool.
speak on the details of that yet, but we're you know working on that. There is some other EDC tool collaborations that I have in the works that'll be coming out, and so I'm really excited about those. That should be coming out around midsummer, hopefully related to diving, which I'm sure people can kind of put something together. And then yeah, I mean, I have. Besides that, I mean, I may have another watch project in the works, but just for the, I'll just try to keep it at that, just because
Yeah.
I don't want to end up saying too much. But
Yeah.
yeah, fun.
Don't get yourself in trouble.
This year it's going to be a fun one, especially for Deep Sea EDC in general, and the brand, and just like things that I've always wanted to design and work on. I'm going to get to do that with great people, so that's what I'm looking
Very
forward
cool.
to.
Yeah. And maybe at some point you'll get a little bit of sleep along the way.
We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and play a game then. All right, this is a simple game of this or that. You, Brock, are going to pick either A or B, after which I will reveal the topic that you are going to be defending with your life in 1 minute or less to the audience. After which I will then give my pitch for the other topic that you did not choose, and we will leave it up to the audience as to who won the debate. Are you ready to pick your topic?
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, do you want A or B?
I'm going to go with B. B for
All
Brock.
right. Beautiful. All right. So our topic today is helium escape valve crowns versus screw down chronograph pushers. So you now have 1 minute to defend screw down chronograph pushers. Are you ready for that?
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead. I got a dive bezel today, so I'm not using my phone. I'm gonna set it. You have 1 minute on the clock starting now.
I think the chronograph watch specifically for military divers was kind of revolutionary because it allowed you to track longer dives than just one specific hour. So in order to have that technology integrated into a watch, you had to make it waterproof essentially. And so that's why I think having screw down crown pushers is very important. You don't want to have a water ingress points into your watch, obviously, if you're going to be using it for diving. And so I think even though there probably aren't that many people that are going to use that nowadays, I think the function itself is a cool part of history of diving watches. It's just like a helium escape valve. Most people aren't going to use it, but I think realistically, it also adds a pretty cool little look. A lot of the times there's knurling on the crowns, and it makes it look a little bit more aggressive, but I like that. And I think other people kind of relate to that as just part of the design.
And time. That's your minute, Brock. I'm sorry you ran out.
Man,
All right. And now I have 1 minute on the bezel. Starting now. All right, helium escape valve crowns. You played yourself on this one because I guess I scammed you a little bit. The Planet Ocean is one of the most iconic designs out there. That little barnacle on the wrist is beautiful for the reason that it is ugly. It is completely purposeless. You don't need it. You can have it flush like the Tudor Pelagos, but it just adds a little bit of character. Your
hmm
screw down chronograph pushers are useless. Gaskets are better than they ever have been before, but who really needs to be screwing them, unscrewing them in order to actually use your chronograph? No, 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 no. If I am deep diving, if I'm deep diving, I don't want to have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I mean, let's be honest, I'm not deep diving anyway, so that's never going to actually happen. But the helium escape valve crown is there just to add that extra peace of mind, just for something to look at and occasionally bump into. And for the most part, it stays out of the way. So it's really not a nuisance. It just adds that little bit of flair and character. That's it.
I think you're wrong. We'll just start there. No, I'm
Hey,
just kidding.
that's for our audience to decide. And I guess for anyone listening here too, this podcast, it drops Mondays at 7 a.m., I think. But then the video is going to be live on YouTube at 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning. So you can go on YouTube and drop a comment on there, or just DM me that I'm right on Instagram because we all know that I'm right on there. Brock, before we close it out here, I did ask you to bring some sort of cultural or gear recommendation. Did you do that?
Yes. Well, actually, I kind of had two things. I mentioned
Cool. Okay.
quickly, I mentioned the To What Remains Project Recover movie that's on YouTube. And I think if you listen to this podcast and you have interest in Project Recover, I think that's a really good place to start. That's what got me into it. And it's a really moving movie. It's about an hour, maybe hour and a half, 2 hours that I think if that interests you at all, you should definitely watch it. And then that leads into my next thing. One of the museums that I've been to that I love and cherish is the Man in the Sea Museum in Panama City Beach. It's a great people, a group of guys who run that and kind of keep it moving. And there's a lot of really cool diving history and watch history there that I think if you are a watch guy or even just interested in diving at all, I think it is a must see. So if you're ever down in Panama City Beach, I highly recommend going there.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll have links for that in the show notes, obviously. I brought along a YouTube video for you out there. So, Brock, I don't know if you've seen this one or not. Do you follow Speed on YouTube?
Like the old, is it? I assume it's a channel, but not related to
Yeah.
Speed Television,
No,
like
no,
from
no.
back
So
in the
this
day.
is
Speed
this is
channel.
James. Yeah, James Pumphrey from Donut Media. It's Speed
Okay.
with three E's, I believe. But
Oh,
he
okay.
very related to our topic today, he put out a video called Building a Cheap, Fun Off-Roader in 48 Hours. And basically, he took the Porsche SUV, stripped the whole thing down, and turned it into an off-road car. Did it very quickly, did it, I guess, kind of on the cheap, and had a ton of fun doing it. They get pretty specific. They break the whole thing down. They show some schematics and tell you why that is kind of the perfect cheap off-roader for a lot of people out there. So if you can't afford a vintage Land Rover, you can go out there and buy a more modern Porsche and do it yourself.
Yeah.
That's a fun one.
No, I actually saw that video on my
Okay.
YouTube recommendations, and I haven't watched it yet. It's funny, like quick thing, side note, my
Yeah.
brother has a Cayenne GTS, an old one, and we actually used it to tow an Airstream down to go look at the Land Rover that I bought. And it was like a whole little trip. But those engines in those Cayennes are extremely reliable. And what people don't know is like they think it's there's obviously things that could be expensive to repair on those, but
Yeah.
they're pretty robust vehicles overall. And it's an awesome car. So I'm sure I'm going to watch that right as soon as we get off this.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, he goes into it too. The suspension is overbuilt and the chassis
hmm
is overbuilt because they didn't quite know who they were building those cars for at the time.
hmm
And like all things, when you don't know your market, you tend to overbuild it, and then you adapt and build it pretty crappily after that. So
Yeah.
the original ones are way better than the modern ones. Yeah, highly
hmm
recommend that you check that out. Well, Brock, thank you very much for joining me on this episode. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to jump on the episode here and chat about watches, chat about overlanding, chat about Project Recover. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, it's always great to hang out and get to talk to you. And I'm super excited about this podcast. So I'm looking forward to watching the other ones as they come out.
Yeah, it's super fun. Hopefully, we'll have you back on here in the near future. We could talk all about gear next time. We'll talk about, I don't know, we'll do photography and knives and all that kind of stuff. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. I love that.
Cool. All right. And everyone who tuned in, we really appreciate you being here and hope that this was time well spent for all of you.